Welcome to the Circle Sessions featuring the Circle of Experts. Each week, one of the Circle of Experts joins me to talk about critical aspects of growing your podcast. We focus on marketing, social media, monetization, and website design to help you implement all of these together. The Circle of Experts are Yasmine Robles from Robles Designs, Tanisha English-Amamu of TJE Communications, and Don the Idea Guy. I'm Brett Johnson, my podcast guy from Circle 270 Media Podcast Consultants. This week, Yasmine is here from the Circle of Experts. Yasmine works alongside clients to design a website that's driven by strategy, looks amazing, and that you can actually use to grow your podcast and then in turn your business as well. Yasmine, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sure. This is an interesting topic you want to go over, and I really had never thought about using storytelling in web design. I mean, we talk about storytelling in blogs and podcasts, and just anything in a realm that we're creating content. But I like this idea about storytelling in a web design. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so as I've been venturing into the world of design and marketing for like the past 10 years, I did come to realize that there's a lot of power in being able to tell your story online visually, maybe with some content in there, and creating this memorable brand experience that goes beyond, when you're meeting somebody at a networking event, when you're speaking at an event, and then they actually go to your website and that whole story comes full circle. So that's something that really entices me. And I think that a lot of podcasters and small businesses can benefit from.
Yeah. So let's talk about how that works in web design. How does it go beyond visuals and contribute to the user experience, that UX we talk about a lot?
Yeah. So storytelling is really the heartbeat of the brand. It's not just about the visual on a deeper level. And then when a brand has like that compelling, what that means really when it comes to your website is that you want to create a message and get it out there visually on your site. So that means making sure that the message is lightweight, that you're getting to the point, that you're giving cost experience on that site, making your path as simple as possible to understand that story. So let's say you are a speaker about mental health. You want to make sure that you're meeting that audience where they're at. And that comes with research and knowing your field, knowing your audience. But you want to meet them where they're at right now, depending on what you do, and showcase what that transformation could look like after they have worked with you or after maybe they hired you to talk to their team. So you meet them where they're at, you showcase that transformation, that aspiration that they have, and then that's when you can pitch a service or your podcast or your merch, whatever that may be. But that's really where that storytelling comes in. And then visually, you want to make sure that the user doesn't feel overwhelmed. So if any of you have ever been in, like, I know for me, I was in AP European history. That's the one that really got to me because they gave me a book that was really thick, tiny text, and it was not even double spaced, it was very hard to read and no pictures. And so you don't want to do that. You don't want to give your audience PTSD about going back to high school. You want to make sure that it's easy to read, short paragraphs, bullet points, sections that are divided up, headlines that if they're really just scanning through the page, they can still get that story across and understand what you do, who you do it for, and why you do it, why you're passionate about it. That's the essence of storytelling when it comes to your website.
That's a really good example because I've got a couple of books that I'm trying to get into, but it's that, oh my gosh, it has to be 8-point font, no breaks in it and such. But that's a really good example of you're seeing that on a website. You kind of go, okay, they're trying to tell a story here, but they're not doing a very good job of it. I'm sure the meat of it looks good, but it's like you said, it's got to be broken up and stuff in regards to maybe images or video or something like that. So, talking and a listener that may be a designer and businesses, of course, listen to the podcast, how do you, Robles Designs, incorporate storytelling in that design process?
Yeah, so at Robles Designs, we approach every project mindset and really a mindset that focuses in on your user. we know that it's a web that you're the one hiring us for the website design, for the marketing, the social, all that. But really, we're looking at the end user and what they're going to experience, what you want to get across. So we begin by understanding your story, your values, unique selling points, and from there we interweave them seamlessly into the design and creating this really cohesive messaging that engages the user. In addition to that, we will just add some graphic fun elements. So, or what I like to call fun elements, but very slight, maybe hover effects, or perhaps you have some images of how, let's say for a chamber, how the chamber was founded. Do you have a photograph of the original founders? Things like that can bring delight to users. It can be something that has an on hover effect, or maybe a little game that's embedded into the site. It could also just be something that slightly rotates when they scroll. Those little delightful elements will help get that brand across. And again, just keeping in mind that it's a website for you, for your podcast, for your business, but at the end of the day, it's really geared towards telling a story to your ideal client or listener.
Right. So, my mind's trying to reel in regards. If I'm thinking of websites that are doing that and maybe doing it poorly or doing it well, but can you share some specific case studies where storytelling made a significant impact on a website's success?
Yeah, yeah. So there's two clients that we work with. We work with a carpenter's son, and you can Google them. They create really amazing pieces of furniture, just whether it's a conference table or just incredible pieces, and they're growing really fast. It was a great client to work with. They really had an incredible story of how they started the business because I believe that they were accidental entrepreneurs. They were just trying to gain funds, to start their family. And so that story that can be pulled out and then visually be placed on the website. More of their story is really on the about page as it showcases images of the family, a timeline of how the business evolved and grew, where they were located. But then on the rest of the pages, you can still feel that same tone of voice, that narrative with all of the imagery, the text showcasing their pieces, but everything still has their personality. And for them, it's a lot of images because they're proud of the work they do. It's beautiful work. And so making sure that we showcased visually the work that they put into it. So we were able to grab um, blueprints of furniture pieces that they've created, that their designers have designed, and place them on the site. So we don't just show the end result, the end product, but we're also showcasing their ability to be artistic with these pieces of furniture, these custom items. Another client that I believe had a really great story to tell is Dream Right Creative. It's woman owned, and they create content for entrepreneurs basically. If you are in the business, have a large business and need to train people, they will create those training manuals for you. But the website looked a little stale, just like Carpenter's Son. It didn't really explain that whole personality. And so, with that, those small delightful items that we added there were slightly rotating. We extracted their logo and took parts of their logo and made it slightly rotate when it loads as you're scrolling through the site. These subtle things can really pull everything together visually, as well as the way that the content is written with that same tone of voice, that personality that you bring. And ultimately, whether you have a podcast, a small business, micro business, you want to make sure that there is something that differentiates you from your competition. And that comes down to the content that's written, the tone, how you organize it visually, and if you have any other delightful items to add, whether that is a photo of Brett when he was
Mm.
younger and not even thinking about being an entrepreneur, or it could be, the office pet, whatever that is, to just bring a little bit of personality to that user and that story.
Yeah. Yeah, you're giving me a lot of examples in my head of it's at first I'm thinking, "Why? Why do this?" But the examples that you gave and also things that, websites that have just popped in my head that are using it, it's like, yeah, that adds a lot of personality. It may not be the main page, but it is interesting to see the genesis story, why they're in business, their attitude toward doing business, why, that sort of thing. Another one is a local business here in Columbus, a pet store that has done a podcast in the past called Fangs and Fur, and they have
Oh,
a, a
mhm.
story page as well too, and it really describes well why they do it. And it's a picture of the family with dogs and that sort of thing, and it adds value to the website.
Yeah, and people do business with people they love. So,
Yeah.
as an example, we run a marketing agency. We compare to other marketing agencies. If you strip everything, all of our personality, it's probably the same. But at the end of the day, it's people that you just have fun speaking to, that
Mhm.
you trust, and that you just vibe with. And so, you want to make sure that comes across. So, whether you are, let's say, a divorce attorney or you are a future podcaster, you want to make sure that that story really comes across through your website because that's just going to seep through everything. And your website really is where people will stalk you after they hear a clip of your podcast or
Yeah.
somebody tags you and says this is the person you need to contact for X, Y, and Z. You want them to get to know you and find out why you are valuable as well as why you would be the best fit.
Right, exactly, and why you should continue to listen in a podcast example too,
Hmm.
or continue to read, or whatever it is. If you're in the entertainment world, I guess you could say it's that
Yeah.
people kind of want to know about you, why you're doing what you're doing, why
Yeah.
you're doing that true crime podcast or an
Yeah.
exercise, podcast or whatever. What brought you to this point of creating? Right. We talk. Yeah. We.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to mention that there's been so many times that I have listened to podcasts and then go
Yeah.
online just to find out what people look like.
Hmm.
And it always blows my mind that I envision something completely different. And even just having a splash page for your podcast with the headshot, people love that, right?
Yeah.
If it is true crime, why are you into true crime? What is the story behind that? Who inspired you? What was the first episode of true crime that you watched or documentary or whatever it was? So people love to have a connection, and that's really what it is. You're creating a relationship with your user. You're creating a connection.
Well, and you brought it up earlier too, that differentiation piece, that it's that, okay, I'm doing this because, and let's stay with the true crime. There are lots of true crime podcasts. So what makes you do yours differently? And that's the page, or
Hmm.
entrepreneur podcasts. There's a boatload of entrepreneur podcasts. Well, that page can help you differentiate between the top 10 entrepreneur podcasts, which you may not strive to necessarily be, but also give a picture of, I want you to listen to this podcast as well as others because of what I do, and that's your opportunity to talk on your webpage. Yeah, that makes sense. We talk
Hmm.
a lot
Yeah.
about aesthetics on a website in regards to what it looks like, what it does. So don't weigh it down too much. Don't make it too flashy. Knowing your intended user. So let's talk about the balance between aesthetics and storytelling. How do you navigate this delicate balance in the web design?
Yeah, so being a website designer, I always want to, even for our own site, I always want to add the newest, flashiest things. Or if I figured out how to code, for example, on our site currently, I don't know when you're listening to this, but currently, if you hover over certain letters, depending on the browser, they will be able to change color almost like a gradient, like almost like you're
Hmm.
coloring it yourself. Some of those things can, it's technically, I guess, bog down the website, and you have to play this. It comes down to a choice. So if you're adding cool features to your website, your bogs down the site or slows it down, your storytelling will not even get across because people will not wait for things to load. So you want to make sure it is a very delicate dance between the aesthetics and really while aesthetics create the initial allure, storytelling will ensure that your users stay engaged, that they will continue to listen to the podcast, that they will hire you for that custom furniture piece, or I mentioned divorce
Hmm.
lawyers. They will trust you with one of their most private and painful moments of their life, maybe
Yeah.
because of storytelling. So although we want a lot of flashy things on our site, we want to make sure that there's a harmonious blend with the visuals, the narrative, and that everything complements each other. and really just so look at it from their point of view, not necessarily from your point of view.
Right. So, looking ahead, let's take a look at future trends and in the storytelling and the web design combination. So, what do you see as emerging trends in that storytelling within the web design landscape?
So, depending on your goals and how techy you are, there are a couple of trends that are coming up. There's AR, VR, there's interactive media that's on the rise. We're just entering a really exciting era. We're also entering the era of AI, of ChatGPT, and all these things. These will make it really possible for you to immerse the storytelling. Now, with some of the content AI stuff, you want to make sure that it still sounds like you, that you are running the whatever you write through a checker. I would say your goal, if you're just a business owner, if you're doing it yourself, your goal should be maybe like 20-30% of it can come up as AI written, and just kind of massage it and tweak it. And you want to make sure that it doesn't just sound like an AI wrote it. Even though it might be your story, it still might sound a bit robotic. So just making sure that you're looking at these advancements as a possibility, but you're also looking at it from a storytelling point of view, a human point of view. And that way you can allow your brand to connect. There's other trends out there, visual trends. So you can go, it depends on your brand, but you can go dark mode, which means that basically everything on your site is dark and the content, like the text, is a lighter color or white. There's also the option to code both of those. So you can have a light mode and a dark mode on your site if you're nerdy like me. There's other trends like having more illustrations throughout the site, photographs. People are opting for custom illustrations to really get the point across, or icons. There's the big font phase right now where people just wanted a big purposes. And then there's the space on the site where there might be literally your headline, your top headline on the hero section, which is the topmost portion of your page. Could be one sentence, a short sentence, and that's the only thing, maybe that and a button, and that's the only thing that's there. It's just maybe a color background, and as people scroll, they get to know more. But really, it depends on your brand goals, depends on your business, and it really depends on the user, right? If they're expecting a bright pink neon website, then that's what they expect. But if you are, let's say, a really calm and calming and relaxing yoga studio, you might not want a bunch of flashy things throughout your site.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it still comes down to that remembering and focusing on who will be using the website and learning as you go, of course. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
you think that's who it is or what that would be attracted to them, but it's that listening to your listeners, to your viewers, to anybody that approaches the website, or just anybody that would have an interest, at least looking at what you're creating or in that sort of thing, to kind of give some feedback and know that I'm sure it has to evolve over time. Tweak it here, tweak it there, but at least create it. Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Before we wrap up, any final thoughts or some key takeaways you'd like to share?
Yeah, so number one, if you do have a site, I would encourage you to look up Hotjar, Hotjar. I believe they have a free version. You can install it on your site and really take a look at what people are doing on your website. And it's a nice visual, whereas Google Analytics can give you the numbers. Hotjar can give you a recording. It can give you a heat map and tell you where people are scrolling, clicking, etc. That's a nice one. Another thing I would encourage you to do is, if you currently have a site or if you're working on your storytelling or messaging, go and you can either use, and a friend of mine turned me to this, VideoAsk. I believe they also have a free version, and send them a video questionnaire where they can answer some questions about their frustrations with the survey, with the problem that they're having that you maybe solved for them, what they loved most about it. Basically, a nice, short, easy questionnaire through video format. And the reason you want to do it through video format is because you can pull the words that they're saying and use that in your storytelling. So if you're a personal trainer and you're tackling people like me, who I don't really care about getting healthy and I love my carbs, but if you spoke to me and said, do you want to get back in those skinny jeans? That would be my messaging, right? So you could attract me that way versus saying, do you want to get healthy? So you really want to create that storytelling, that messaging by literally saying what they have told you. So those are two options that you can do. And you can always hit me up and bribe me with either coffee or tacos, and we can get together and talk about your website and how you can really make sure that your content and the visuals of the site are geared towards your user.
Right. I was just going to ask. I mean, the best way to contact you, whether they already have kind of a story built on the website and they're not happy with it, or do they want to start from scratch? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can message me on any of the social platforms. I'm most active on LinkedIn. You can find me at Yasmine Robles or Robles Designs on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram, TikTok, all the places, but you can find me most active on LinkedIn, and you can find our contact form on Robles Designs. That's ROBLES designs.com, and just fill it out and we can have a chat.
Super. Yeah. And for Circle 270 Media, go to mypodcastguide.com and we do the same thing. Just, I don't necessarily, have to go with the tacos. I could go with pizza. Anything carb filled, and I'm the same way. It's like, oh man, carbs. It's my downfall is carbs. I could do pizza though too, or coffee is great as well. But I've got a contact form. Just fill it out, put some stuff on a calendar, and let's talk a little bit at mypodcastguy.com. This has been interesting. Thanks for enlightening me. I've been thinking about this too now in regards to just a little bit more about storytelling on the website. I love it. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.